This episode is presented to you in the form of an audiobook. Every problem you face in life has one simple cause. You care too much about what others think of you. This constant concern for other people's opinions, whether spoken aloud or quietly imagined in your mind, is the root of your unhappiness. It ties you down, dictates your actions, and convinces you that freedom is something you must earn rather than something you already possess. Today, we're diving into the book The Courage to be Disliked, co-written by Japanese philosopher and psychologist Ichiro Kishimi and author Fumitake Koga. The book is framed as a dialogue between a philosopher and a young man, echoing the style of Socratic conversation. And through it, the authors explain why so many of us remain stuck in cycles of worry, self-doubt, dissatisfaction. For both Kishimi and Koga, internal worry is always linked to the outside world. They make a radical claim. There is no such thing as worry. That is completely defined by the individual. So-called internal worry does not exist. Whatever unease or restlessness you feel, it is almost always shaped by the shadow of other people's presence, opinions, or imagined judgments. The central argument of the book is bold. All of life's problems can be solved with one simple shift in perspective. Life only seems unbearably complex because we insist on making it so. Strip it down to its essence, and the authors claim you will see that happiness requires only one thing: the courage to be disliked. This is not simply about ignoring criticism. It's about understanding that freedom means being disliked by some people, and being willing to accept that reality without bitterness. As Kishimi and Koga explain, it's not confidence you lack, it's courage. The courage to live in alignment with your own chosen values, even when others disapprove. They add another surprising layer. The courage to be happy also includes the courage to be disliked. In other words, if you truly wish to live a happy life, you must embrace the possibility that others may not approve of you, may even resent you, and that their opinions should not dictate the course of your existence. When you gain that courage, they argue, your relationships transform from heavy burdens into sources of lightness and freedom. In this episode, we'll unpack the key teachings from the book. We'll explore the psychology of unhappiness, the futility of seeking external approval, and the author's practical advice on how to live a life that feels authentically happy, no matter what others think. Kishimi and Koga's worldview is grounded in the work of Austrian psychologist Alfred Adler, one of the three giants of early psychology alongside Freud and Jung. Unlike Freud, who emphasized unconscious drives, or Jung, who emphasized archetypes and collective symbols, Adler focused on the individual's goals and their sense of belonging. For Adler, no matter your past, no matter your wounds, you still have the power to direct your life toward happiness. The crucial difference between happy and unhappy people is not talent, luck, or fate's willingness. Willingness to change, willingness to accept responsibility, and most importantly, willingness to live without being shackled by the approval of others. Adler believed that the self is a unified whole. Your body, your mind, your emotions, and both your conscious and unconscious thoughts are not random fragments, they all cooperate in service of a goal. This means that everything you think, do, or feel, even your anxiety, anger, or sadness, has a purpose. It is aimed at achieving something, even if you're not consciously aware of it. According to Adler, your goals don't just influence your happiness, they shape who you are. They form the blueprint of your identity. Kishimi and Koga expand on this idea. They emphasize that Adler doesn't reduce people to fixed personality traits, as if we are forever bound to be introverted or outgoing, shy or confident. Instead, he looks at people through the lens of lifestyle. Your lifestyle, your habits, your patterns of thought, your emotional tendencies was, at some point, chosen. You picked it, often unconsciously, as the best available strategy to pursue a goal. And here's the critical point. You continue to choose it every single day. Consider the example of someone who appears antisocial, avoiding friends, conversations, and gatherings. According to Kishimi and Koga, there's no such thing as an inherently antisocial person. What looks like antisocial behavior is really just a tactic, a chosen lifestyle that serves a hidden goal. Perhaps the goal is to avoid rejection or to preserve a sense of superiority by refusing to engage with others. What matters is not the label of antisocial, but the goal behind the behavior. They go further. Goals don't just shape actions, they also generate emotions. First, you decide what you want, and then often, unconsciously, you create the emotions that will help you reach it. Take anxiety as an example. Imagine someone wants a new job. They schedule an interview but then feel paralyzed with fear, so much so that they can't prepare properly or even bring themselves to show up. On the surface, they'll say, "If only my anxiety disappeared, I'd have a real shot at the job." But Kishimi and Koga fled this logic. They argue that the person's true hidden goal is not to get the job at all, it's to avoid the risk of failing. To achieve that hidden goal, the person generates the emotion of fear. Fear becomes a convenient tool, a self-sabotaging ally that allows them to retreat while justifying their retreat. This approach also changes how we look at trauma. Many people believe that past traumas forever trap them in unhappiness. Kishimi and Koga challenge this. They acknowledge that painful experiences shape us, but they refuse to see them as absolute determinants. Not everyone who suffers trauma remains bound by it. Instead, they argue that what truly matters is the meaning you assign to those experiences. In the book, they write, "No experience is in itself a cause of our success or failure. We do not suffer from the shock of our experiences, the so-called trauma, but instead, we make out of them whatever suits our purposes. We are not determined by our experiences, but the meaning we give them is self-determining." Think about that for a moment. Your past is not a chain wrapped around your ankle. It is raw material. Two people can go through nearly identical hardships, and one will use it as a reason to give up, while the other will use it as fuel to rise higher. The difference is not the experience itself, but the interpretation. And this leads us to perhaps the most liberating teaching of the book. No matter what has occurred in your life up to this very moment, it does not need to dictate what comes next. The past is over. Its influence remains only to the extent that you keep reinterpreting your present through its lens. You, living in the here and now, are the one who determines your life. The authors insist your future is not written in your past, it is written in your choices today. So, what does it all come down to? Courage. The courage to redefine your goals, to take ownership of your lifestyle, and most importantly, to live without needing approval from others. Freedom is not found in pleasing everyone. Happiness is not found in being universally admired. Both are found in the willingness to say, "This is my life. I may be disliked, but I will live it fully." That is the radical, yet profoundly simple message of the courage to be disliked. So if happiness is truly within our control, why then would anyone deliberately choose unhappiness? At first, this question seems absurd. Who would willingly choose a life of dissatisfaction, fear, and inner conflict? Yet Kishimi and Koga, in The Courage to be Disliked, make a striking claim. Unhappiness is not always an accident, it can be a strategy. They argue that unhappiness often serves as a tool, a method people unconsciously use to achieve certain goals. To understand this, we must revisit one of their central ideas. Our goals shape our emotions. We don't simply feel emotions randomly. Instead, our minds generate them to help us reach the outcomes we desire. If this is the case, then unhappiness, as painful as it may seem, is sometimes chosen because it provides a strange sense of safety or purpose. Unhappiness as strategy, occasional unhappiness is, of course, inevitable. Everyone feels disappointed, rejected, or frustrated at times. That is part of the human condition. But what about those who live in a constant state of dissatisfaction? Kishimi and Koga suggest that such people are often caught in the grip of a single, frustrating goal, one that revolves around their relationships with others. And this is a crucial point. According to the authors, the essence of happiness or unhappiness lies in the goals we set for our relationships. What are we really trying to achieve when we interact with people? That hidden intention determines whether we live freely or remain trapped. They explain that, broadly speaking, there are two possible goals in human relationships. The first is seeking approval, wanting others to like us, validate us, and affirm our worth. The second is aiming to make a positive impact, seeking to contribute, to bring value, and to live authentically, regardless of how others judge us. The problem, the authors argue, is that many people get stuck in the first goal, and this is what dooms them to unhappiness. The trap of approval. Unhappy people believe that true happiness comes from being seen as good by others. It could be their parents, their teachers, their boss, their partner, or even the vague, invisible presence of society. Whoever the audience is, the pattern remains the same. They tie their sense of worth to approval. At first glance, this might not seem unreasonable. After all, isn't seeking recognition a natural human instinct? Don't we all, in some way, crave validation? Kishimi and Koga respond firmly. This belief is mistaken. It's not that approval itself creates happiness. Rather, approval satisfies a deeper need, our fear of rejection. What people truly want is not praise, but the assurance that they won't be disliked. And here lies the danger. By constantly pursuing approval, one begins to live life according to someone else's expectations. Slowly, freedom disappears. Your choices are no longer your own. They are filtered through the imagined judgment of others. The reward and punishment systems of childhood education reinforce this pattern. We are taught early on that being good earns praise, and being bad brings scolding. As adults, many never escape this conditioning. But Kishimi and Koga emphasize the cost. Approval-based living is unfree living. Imagine walking through life with invisible chains around you, canes forged by every imagined opinion, every look of disapproval, every withheld compliment. To live like this is to hand over your autonomy. You are not steering your own life. You are being steered by the shifting winds of others' expectations. The fear of being disliked. Why then would anyone accept such chains? The answer is fear. People cling to approval because they are terrified of being disliked. The idea of rejection, of standing outside the group, feels unbearable. So they convince themselves that it's better to live within the prison of others' judgments than to face the risk of disapproval. But Kishimi and Koga turn this fear on its head. Freedom, they argue, is precisely the courage to be disliked. Unless you are willing to be misunderstood, judged, or even rejected, you will never truly be free. To live authentically means paying the cost of disapproval. And here's the paradox. Only when you embrace that cost does life begin to feel light. When you no longer care about whether people see you as good, you free yourself to actually do good in ways that matter to you. The tyranny of praise. This brings us to another subtle danger. Many assume that being praised is harmless, even desirable. But Kishimi and Koga warn that praise itself can be a form of judgment. To be praised is to be measured by someone else's yardstick. If you crave it, you will adapt your behavior to fit their expectations. You will restrain your freedom in order to keep the praise flowing. Think of the student who only studies to win their teacher's approval, or the employee who only works hard for their boss's recognition. Their actions are not guided by inner conviction, but by the hope of external reward. And the moment that praise disappears, so does their motivation. The futility of approval, but perhaps the greatest tragedy of all, is that approval is often unattainable. You cannot control what others think of you. Some people will dislike you no matter what you do. Others will set expectations so high that you can never meet them. And because approval depends on their judgment, not yours, it is forever out of your hands. This means that those who chase approval are running after a moving target. Even if they catch it for a moment, it slips away again. This endless pursuit breeds exhaustion and resentment, deepening their unhappiness, giving up without letting go. So what happens when someone realizes they cannot win approval? Often, they simply stop trying. They give up on chasing recognition. But, as Kishimi and Koga explain, this doesn't free them. Instead, they replace the pursuit of approval with negative emotions. They might retreat into fear, convincing themselves they are too anxious to try. Or they might fall into self-hatred, using it as an excuse for inaction. In either case, they still remain tied to the original goal. They haven't truly let go of their desire for recognition, they've just inverted it. Their unhappiness becomes proof of their failure, which keeps them bound to the very thing they wanted to escape. It's like someone refusing to play a game anymore, but still sitting by the field, obsessing over the players. They may have walked away, but their heart is still trapped in the game. The way forward, the key insight here, is that happiness is not about approval at all. It is about choosing different goals for our relationships. Instead of asking, "How can I be liked?" we must ask, "How can I contribute?" Instead of worrying about how others judge us, we must focus on how we can bring value to them while remaining true to ourselves. Contribution, unlike approval, is always within our control. You decide how much kindness, skill, or effort you bring to the world. And in contribution lies freedom. Because when your happiness no longer depends on being liked, you are no longer chained by fear. Kishimi and Koga remind us that courage is the true foundation of happiness. The courage to act, the courage to live authentically, and above all, the courage to be disliked. Without this, life becomes an endless chase for recognition. With it, life becomes light, free, and filled with meaning. The trap of flawed identity, the second strategy that unhappy people often adopt, according to Kishimi and Koga, is to convince themselves that there is something inherently wrong with them. They cling to the belief that they are flawed in a way that makes them unworthy of acceptance or affection. This limiting belief becomes both a shield and a prison. On the surface, it offers protection. If others do not like them, they can explain it away by blaming their supposed flaw rather than confronting the painful reality of rejection. But beneath this illusion of safety lies a more devastating truth. By telling themselves they are fundamentally flawed, they rob themselves of the possibility of change. If someone believes they are doomed to be disliked because of who they are, why would they bother trying to grow, improve, or connect? This mindset locks people in a cycle of hopelessness. Instead of risk, they choose resignation. Instead of courage, they choose retreat. And this retreat, though it feels protective, breeds misery. Because if you cannot change what is wrong, then you are powerless. And the sense of powerlessness, as Kishimi and Koga remind us, is one of the deepest sources of human unhappiness. The competitive lens of unhappiness, but the consequences of seeking external approval extend far beyond self-esteem. They ripple outward, shaping the way unhappy people see others and how they interact with the world. One of the key distortions that this approval-seeking creates is the idea that life is a competition. Unhappy people often view others not as allies but as rivals. Success becomes a zero-sum game. If someone else is admired, praised, or celebrated, it feels like their own worth has been diminished. If someone else is loved, they fear there is less love left for them. Life becomes a constant tallying of victories and losses, and each win by another is experienced as a personal defeat. Why does this happen? Because approval is conditional and comparative. One person may be admired for their humor, another for their kindness, another for their accomplishments. But no one can embody every admirable quality at once. This means that no matter what you do, someone else will always seem to do it better. When approval is the goal, others' successes raise the bar, making it harder for you to feel worthy. As a result, the approval seeker begins to resent the very people they should celebrate. This mindset poisons relationship. It makes it nearly impossible to feel joy for another person's achievements. Instead of encouragement, there is envy. Instead of connection, there is distance. At worst, unhappy people may even secretly celebrate others' failures, because in those failures, they find temporary relief, the sense that they are no longer losing. But such perverse satisfaction only deepens their loneliness, because no authentic bond can grow in soil tainted by envy. Kishimi and Koga stress that once a person frees themselves from the scheme of competition, something profound happens. The need to triumph over others disappears. Life shifts from rivalry to community, from comparison to contribution. Without the constant measuring stick of approval, relationships can finally breathe. Sacrifice, resentment, and broken bonds, the second way approval-seeking damages relationships, is more subtle but equally destructive. Many unhappy people operate under the belief that relationships are built on sacrifice. Since they spend their lives trying to meet the expectations of others, they come to expect the same in return. This creates a transactional mindset. I give to you, so you must give to me. On the surface, This may look like generosity. They might throw a party, buy gifts, or go out of their way to please someone. But beneath the gesture lies a hidden contract. The act is not truly unconditional. It comes with the expectation of gratitude, recognition, or reciprocity. When this expectation goes unmet, resentment brews. Imagine someone organizing a surprise birthday celebration for a friend, not out of pure joy, but with the hidden hope that the friend will one day do the same for them. If the friend does not, the organizer feels betrayed, not because the friend failed as a friend, but because they failed to uphold the unwritten contract of approval. In such cases, the relationship is not founded on love or care, but on a subtle form of manipulation. The other person is being used as a mirror to reflect one's worth. This resentment corrodes relationships. It transforms generosity into obligation and kindness into debt. And because no one wants to feel indebted, these dynamics push people away instead of drawing them closer. The approval seeker ends up lonelier than before, confirming their belief that they are flawed or unloved, when in reality, it was their own hidden expectations that created the rift. Shifting from approval to contribution, Kishimi and Koga propose a radically different approach for those who want to live a happier, freer life. The solution is not to abandon relationships altogether, nor is it to double down on chasing approval. The path to happiness, they argue, lies in shifting the goal of relationships away from validation and toward contribution. Instead of asking, "Do they like me?" or "Will they approve of me?" the happy person asks, "How can I be of use to others?" In this reframing, the center of attention shifts outward. Happiness comes not from being admired, but from genuinely believing that you are contributing to the well-being of others. Contribution does not mean grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices. It can be as simple as listening to someone who needs to talk, encouraging a friend, or sharing a small kindness. What matters is not the scale of the act, but the spirit behind it. When people live with the mindset of contribution, they no longer need external recognition, because they already know in their hearts, "I am of use to someone." This sense of contribution brings with it a quiet confidence. It dissolves the hunger for validation, because the person is no longer trying to prove their worth, they are living it. It also strengthens relationships, because contribution fosters trust, connection, and genuine care rather than rivalry or resentment. Freedom through self-acceptance. At the root of this philosophy lies a deeper truth: freedom. To be free means to live without the chains of others' expectations, without the constant fear of being disliked, without the exhausting race for approval. But freedom is not possible without self-acceptance. If a person cannot accept themselves, they will forever seek others to fill the gap. Kishimi and Koga emphasize that community feeling, the sense of belonging and contributing to something larger than oneself, is inseparable from self-acceptance. A person who is obsessed with recognition has not yet accepted themselves, nor have they developed confidence in others or in their place in the community. True freedom, then, requires both: the courage to accept oneself as one is, and the courage to trust that one's small contributions matter. For happy people, helping others isn't viewed as a burdensome duty or a noble sacrifice. Instead, it becomes something deeply rewarding in act that nourishes their own sense of purpose and fulfillment. At first glance, this might sound self-centered, but Kishimi and Koga argue that there is nothing wrong with living for your own happiness. In fact, they suggest that the pursuit of happiness is the most natural and sustainable motivation humans can have. When helping others contributes to personal joy, service no longer feels like a transaction or a moral obligation. It becomes a freely chosen expression of one's values and humanity. This shift in perspective is crucial because it frees people from the hidden trap of seeking approval. Many unhappy individuals do good deeds primarily because they want recognition, respect, or validation. They give to others not out of genuine desire, but out of fear that they won't be seen as good enough if they don't. Kishimi and Koga call this disguised self-sacrifice a subtle but dangerous pattern, where kindness becomes conditional, and resentment grows when gratitude or acknowledgement is missing. By contrast, happy people help others simply because it makes them happy. Their motivation is inward, not outward. And because their joy doesn't depend on anyone else's reaction, they can continue to serve without bitterness. The authors go further, explaining that the desire to help for personal happiness is actually stronger than doing it because it's the right thing. Moral obligation is fragile when life gets difficult, when people are ungrateful, or when recognition never comes. Obligation collapses. But joy is resilient. If helping others feeds one's own sense of meaning, then the act is self-sustaining. A happy person does not need applause, repayment, or moral superiority. They are already rewarded by the act itself. Beyond this, Kishimi and Koga remind us of something profoundly simple, yet often overlooked. Just existing is enough to bring joy to others. Humans are social beings, and our connections do not rely solely on extraordinary achievements. Think of the comfort of a friend sitting silently beside you during hard times, or the warmth of a family member simply being present. These moments remind us that our value is not tied to constant productivity or perfection. Happy people embrace this truth. They understand that their presence has meaning, even when they are not performing, fixing, or excelling. This belief that all humans have inherent value becomes the foundation of self-acceptance. Happy people do not deny their flaws or mistakes, but they do not allow these shortcomings to erase their worth. They can look at themselves honestly, acknowledge imperfections, and still recognize that they matter. This perspective releases them from the endless cycle of trying to prove themselves. It also transforms how they see others. If everyone has value simply by existing, then there is no reason to judge, compare, or compete. Unhappy people, trapped in the pursuit of approval, often see life as a zero-sum game. If someone else succeeds, their own worth decreases. But for happy people, success is abundant. The achievements of others do not diminish their own sense of purpose. Instead, they celebrate them, finding joy in the fact that more good is being contributed to the world. The mindset of competition is replaced with one of cooperation and appreciation. Where unhappy people feel threatened, happy people feel inspired. Equally important is how happy people relate to time and possibility. Many people believe happiness lies in the future. I'll be happy when I get promoted, or I'll finally feel good once I'm loved by the right person. But this mindset creates endless postponement. Kishimi and Koga argue that happiness is not something to chase far ahead. It is something to choose in the present moment. Happy people live this truth. They understand that every interaction, no matter how small, is an opportunity to create joy for themselves and for others. A smile, a kind word, or simply showing up is enough. This does not mean happy people abandon ambition or stop working toward goals. On the contrary, they pursue goals with enthusiasm, but they also find joy in the journey itself. For them, the process of striving holds meaning, not just the outcome. That way, if life ended suddenly, they would not look back with regret, feeling as though everything was wasted while waiting for some distant success. The final lesson Kishimi and Koga emphasize is both liberating and challenging. No matter what you do, not everyone will like you. It is impossible to win universal approval, and trying to do so only leads to exhaustion and self-betrayal. True happiness requires the courage to accept this reality and to live in alignment with your own sense of what is good and meaningful. The freedom to be disliked is, paradoxically, the foundation of genuine connection and service. In the end, happiness is not about sacrifice, affection, or approval. It is about embracing the joy of contribution, recognizing the inherent value of existence, celebrating the success of others, living fully in the present, and having the courage to stand by one's convictions even when disapproval comes. As Kishimi and Koga make clear, the path to happiness is not found in trying to be universally admired. It is found in the simple but radical act of choosing to live authentically, here and now. Conclusion: the unhappy person lives in a prison of their own making, bound by the chains of flawed self-perceptions, rivalry, and unspoken contracts of sacrifice. But this prison is not unbreakable. Kishimi and Koga offer a way out, a shift from approval to contribution, from competition to community, from resentment to freedom. Happiness is not the prize of being admired, nor is it the reward for meeting others' expectations. Happiness is the natural result of living authentically, contributing sincerely, and embracing the freedom that comes from self-acceptance. In this way, Kishimi and Koga remind us that happiness is not something given by others, it is something we create by the goals we choose. And when our goal is to be of use rather than to be approved of, we finally discover the joy and freedom that approval could never give us.